How you doing? I'm Ken. This is Ed. Today I'm going to talk about Tan, Bong, and Fook. I'm going to talk about three different things with those. One, the basic mechanical motion that we do. Two, some common mistakes that people do. And three, some basic application using those three motions from a closing the gap distance. Now, as you know, everything we do in Wing Chun operates within this triangle. Everything we do aims towards the apex of this triangle. We take that apex and we aim it towards the other person's center line. Using it in Chi Sao or closing the gap is no difference. So, starting from the Chi Sao position, when I'm in Bong Sao, and I'm going to transition down to Tan Sao, starting with the elbow, I'm going to come back down, elbow circles in, the elbow comes slightly in, and the palm comes up. Again, aiming towards the apex of that triangle. Now, some common mistakes that people do when they do their Tan Sao is one, they end up swinging their elbow in too much. Now, why this is bad is because of a couple of reasons. First off, it makes your pec and your shoulder way too tight. Think about any time you're going to throw a ball. Well, when you throw that ball, your motion should be relaxed and fluid. Now, if you're too tight, you won't be able to be relaxed and fluid. Same things happen if you try to drive your elbow into the center line too much. If I hold the elbow naturally in, just about a finger width away from my ribs, then I'll be able to flow from motion to motion, and I'll be able to release the power of the motion. But if I try to drive the elbow in too much right here, it makes this motion too tight. The second reason why, if I bring my elbow in too much right here, it actually gives my opponent an easier line to attack me. This Tan Sao is the line that intercepts his potential attack from his Fook Sao. So by swinging in too much right here, gives him too easy of a door to walk through. But by right here, if he comes in, I hold my Tan Sao correctly. As he comes in, I can easily flow and block the motion. Now, the third thing that people do, mistake-wise, when they do their Tan Sao, is they end up pushing out too much. And this is a very common thing. Structure and muscle can feel very similar if you don't know how to tell a difference. But it's very common for somebody to use their Fook Sao and aim towards the center, which is good. But the very common mistake that people do is they end up pushing out towards that person's structure instead of keep aiming towards the center. If I push out towards the structure here, it's easy for him to flow to another motion and come in and attack me. But if I aim towards the center here, that's how I intercept his attack, and he comes in here and it allows me to flow easily to my next motion. So, let's go to the next motion, Bong Sao. When I come from here, in Tan Sao, again, keeping my arm at the 135-degree angle, I'm going to aim towards the apex of that triangle. I come up, using the elbow again, and drilling downward at this angle right here. Okay, keeping it at 135 degrees. That 135 degrees is very important in any motion I do for Tan, Bong, and Fook. Remember, Tan and Bong are drilling motions. It's that drilling motion that will allow you to deflect his incoming attack. If you don't have that drilling motion, all you're going to be doing is just pushing against the attack. And if you're stronger than it, sure, you'll push off of it. But if it's stronger than you, you'll get pushed off of it. And that's where the mistakes and problems can happen. So remember, when you go from Tan to Bong, I'm going to come up here, I block using the Jung Sao motion first, and then I continue the circular motion and drill down towards his center. Now, some common mistakes that people do when they do Bong Sao is one, as they come up to do Bong Sao, they end up pushing their forearm out. When I'm here, and I want to maintain this 135-degree angle, don't push out with your forearm this way. All you're going to be doing is pushing against the force of his incoming strike. And again, if his force is stronger than me, I'm going to get pushed back, and that's no good. And by pushing out your forearm, you'll never develop that drilling action that you need to properly deflect his force. The other common mistake that people do is that when they bring their elbow up, they just pop their elbow up here. Now, why is that wrong? Again, going back to the idea of drilling the motion in, you'll never be able to properly deflect the incoming attack. Watch what happens here. If I just, as I roll, and Zed comes in and punches, if I just pop my elbow up, all that happens here is that my forearm actually tends to collapse, which is another problem that we have that I'll get into in a second. But as I come in here, and Ed comes in to punch, I want to drill that motion forward. And that's what happens. That's how the deflection happens with Bong Sao. If you just pop the elbow up, you'll never develop the drilling motion to deflect his incoming attack. The third and final problem people have when they do Bong Sao is they end up collapsing the forearm too much. Now, that 135 degrees is important because that allows you to use the maximum amount of force using the minimum amount of muscle with your structure. If I go inside of that 135 degrees, I actually rely on more muscle to try to maintain this motion. And the more muscle I use, the more that it will prevent me from flowing from motion to motion, and it will prevent me from releasing the power of that motion as well. Remember, everything you do in Wing Chun should feel natural and relaxed. If you feel any tension at all, any tightness like you're being jammed up at all, then you know there's something wrong somewhere and you have to correct that. So the third and final motion is going to be Fuksao. Now, maintain at 135 degrees again. The Fuksao is more of a chisel motion back and forth. So I come up here, just think about like when you saw, come up here, he rolls up, this motion comes forward as well. Now remember, when you're doing your Fuksao, is that you don't want to come down here and push down with that. That's a very common mistake people have. The Fuksao, this forearm here has to maintain the focus towards his center line. The whole arm actually maintains the focus towards the center line. So, a couple common mistakes that people make when they do Fuksao is as Ed rolls down to do his Bong Sao, they end up chopping down towards the ground. That's wrong. Again, if he feels that, as I come down and I aim towards this way, it's easy for him to flow around that and just do a counterattack on me. The next thing that people do mistake-wise with Fuksao, very similar to the Tanzan motion, is that as he comes down, rolls around, they bring their elbow in too much this way. Again, the elbow should be able to hang naturally, just a finger width away from the ribs. If I come in this way too much right here, again, it causes me to be too tight in my pec and my shoulder, and if he feels that, as I'm trying to drive the elbow in, easy for him to flow around. Alright, so those are some common mistakes that people make when they do Tan, Bong, and Fook. And just remember some of the basic mechanics that you do when you do Tan, Bong, and Fook. Tanza, you want to maintain that 135 degree angle, aiming towards his center line. When I come up and do Bong Sao, I keep maintaining that 135 degree angle, and the motion should drill down towards the center line. And same thing with Fuksao. Maintain that 135 degree angle, and make sure you aim towards the center line here. And remember, the elbow is always the thing that controls the motion with Tan, Bong, and Fook. So, let's go into some basic application with Tan, Bong, and Fook from a close and gap distance. Now, there's three things that you need to remember when you do application. One, everything you do in Wing Chun, with the exception of punch, palm, or front kick, is always going to be touch and then apply. The second principle that you want to remember is to go with the force. The third thing you want to do is just go with the flow. So, let's just say, for example, using Tanzao, Ed's going to come in and pot punch me. Now, the first thing I want to do here is make contact. Again, I have to touch and then apply. Now, the second principle, feeling the force. Okay, his force is aimed at my center line, so I can't just come in here and just shoot out to do Tanzao. Again, that's just fighting the force. And remember, everything you do in Wing Chun, you never want to fight the force, because there's one of two things that happen. You bounce off it, or it bounces off you. If it bounces off you, that's okay. But if you bounce off it, that's where trouble can happen, and that gives your opponent the advantage. So, as he comes in to pop, I feel, okay, I touch right here, I feel which way the force is going, and I go with it, and that's how I apply my Tanzao. Everything you do in Wing Chun, touch, feel which way the force is going, and go with the flow, and then apply the motion. So, let's go with Bong Sao. He's going to come in and lock punch me. Again, I touch right here, okay, which way is the force going? The force is again going towards my center line, which is correct. Then I can come in here, go with the flow, and apply my Bong Sao. The third and final one, Fuksao, let's just say Ed comes in and he's just going to do a center line punch. I come in here, I touch, okay, which way is the force going? Again, towards my center right here. Then I can adjust and go with the flow and block. So, using these three basic ideas, how to do the mechanical motion correctly, some common mistakes, and how to apply these motions from closing the gap, that will help your training. Good luck. Thanks.